Hey Wranglers, it's good to be back. It's good to see you. How you doing? I've just been a little bit under the weather. Nothing serious, just some typical stuff, that I've had to do. But anyway, I'm fine. I also want to take this time right now to mention one of my new sponsors that I'm helping here on YouTube and also on Facebook, and it's the lovely and inspirational Bright Kate. My darling Kate has a video down here on my page that you can go look at and check her out. She is lovely and inspirational, and I I recommend her videos. Um, and I'll be helping her more in the future. I can tell you that. Anyway, also I got a new koosh ball. Okay, remember my other koosh ball from my hand? I outgrew it. I could squeeze it. Now this one's just as hard as the old one used to be. But when you do it, look at that cool color. Okay, now look at this. Look at that. I'm trying with my left hand still for the guitar. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about today, koosh balls. Today we're talking about genetic memory and reincarnation. And what's the difference? Is reincarnation real? Is genetic memory real? Is any of that stuff? I mean, what's the deal with that? What's the deal with that? What's the deal with that? That's what I'm that's what I'm going to be talking about. Okay, first of all, let's start with some facts that I would call them. Some facts that there are. First of all, if any of you ever had children, you will know that each child basically comes downloaded with their own software, to put it gently, to put it lightly. They're not a completely blank slate. They have things they like, they have things they don't like, they have their own will, they have their own ways of problem solving. They are individuals the day they come out of that womb and they start getting around. My boy Jack was like that. There was a lot of things that he just, we're not even sure where he learned it or he came from or any of that. I'm not saying that Jack is any kind of mystic or anything like that, but one of the let me get my glasses here so I can read. Basically, let's talk about what genetic memory is. But some of it's instinctual, but I also know that some of it is just the way God made us, or we were born, or whatever. You don't come as a blank slate. It's a whole argument: nature versus nurture. Well, what? It's some of both. And I have spoken, so that's the new scientific fact. Okay, now let's talk about genetic memory real quick. In psychology, genetic memory is the theorized phenomenon in which certain kinds of memories could be inherited, being present at birth in the absence of any associated sensory experience, and that such memories could be incorporated into the genome over long spans of time, which makes sense. Now, let me say that for you in English. Basically, you're born, your DNA actually holds memories that you had from that your ancestors had. Okay, I'm not saying that you had from past lives yet. I'm saying that your ancestors had. And part of this, I think, is a survival technique. The way our brain forms memories is to make neural connections between synapses and those kind of things. It's not unreasonable to expect the. Oh gosh, I didn't get my collar all right. It's not unreasonable for the rest of us to expect maybe other parts of our body have a similar way of adapting, a similar way of functioning to remember things. Now, you can't cut off your nose and grow a bunch of kids with no nose. It doesn't work that way, but things can be in your genome that, connections can be made in your genome, which means your DNA, that could be memories. Could be the same way that memories form in the brain, they could form in the genome. That could be passed on. Okay. Now, let's talk about a couple of examples of this. And I'm going to slow down. I don't mean to ramble so fast. I'll give you a little pause. First of all, we'll talk about blind Tom Wiggins. He was born a savant. A savant is somebody that learns something without having to be taught it, and usually masters it without having to be taught it. Blind Tom Wiggins was a virtuoso musician from a wee little baby. I mean, as soon as he was starting to able to ambulate and get around, he understood music. He understood the syntax of music. He understood the rules of music. He was able to eventually play and be a he was able to play and be a prodigy at it without being taught one single lesson. The same thing happened with Leslie Lemke. Same thing. He was born, he understood music, and he was able to play and never had a lesson. But these guys had it all laid out in their heads better than many musicians who practiced their whole lives or studied their whole lives. This was in them. Now you say, well, music's universal. No, it's universal to all of us to some respect. But to understand music at the highest level when you've never had a lesson, that is indicative of something we don't quite understand. And there's another case of a man named Alonzo Clemens. He wasn't a musician, he was an artist. He turned out to be a sculptor. He only had to glance at something and he could make it perfectly, he could perfectly recreate it down to the tendons and muscles and all of that kind of thing. And he was always sculpting, just always doing it, whether it was Crisco or clay or whatever. He even said Crisco in the article, which was kind of cute. But nobody taught him to do this, and he started doing it from a tiny, tiny age. Well, you could say that's just talent. Well, it came, whatever it was. It's beyond talent. There's an old saying: talent is a measure of your level of interest. Genius is a measure of how hard you work. Now, that's all stuff that we contain within our life. And my friend Dennis Pimple taught me that saying. So, Dennis, if you're listening, thank you. I remember that. I remember a lot of the stuff you told me. It's good stuff. So it wasn't just talent. It was an innate ability to do the miraculous, I would say, as far as artistically do the miraculous things there. The savant did not have to be taught. Now, we talk about, let me go through another couple of examples here. People who claim to have been reincarnated. There are certain religious traditions that rely and insist on reincarnation. That's Hinduism and Buddhism and things like that. We have cases now. You're going to have right now. A lot of you are thinking, "Oh, what about this case and what about that case?" That's not just genetic memory. They knew too much. They knew too much. Well, I don't really. How should I say this? I don't think they knew too much. I'm okay right now. I'm going to tell you where I sit before I tell you where I stand. Personally, I'm on the side of genetic memory. It makes more sense to me. Do I believe in life after death? Yeah, I do. Personally, I do believe in that, but I don't believe in reincarnation, and that's a personal thing. But actually find genetic memory a little more fascinating. Okay, because we have cases, and I'm looking at a few of them here, and I'm going to talk about them briefly so that we don't. We can go into each one of us. There is a 2-year-old he wasn't born to, he's 2 years old, but there was a Buddha's Rinpoche, which means Lama, who in the 80s, told his disciples that he was going to die and being reincarnated in Seattle. Well, they found a kid in the 90s in Seattle who claimed to be this Lama, this Rinpoche. And Buddhist Lama, if I'm getting the terms mixed up, I apologize to the Buddhists. And the kid, he was identified by the monks, and the kid wanted to go to the temple and do all of this kind of thing. As far as this research goes, I mean, this really did happen, but the kid supposedly knew things that the old Rinpoche knew, and that sort of thing. Now, what I don't know, and I read the story, and what I want to know, but what I don't know, were the kid's parents Buddhists? Was he groomed to think this, like even before he was 2? One of the problems with the research into reincarnation and the research into the reincarnation is so many times, almost exclusively, the research doesn't start till after the child or the parents and both are convinced that it's a legit reincarnation or whatever. Then the research starts. That's a little bit putting the cart behind the horse, I guess. That's not a good way to research this, I don't think. I think there's too many other factors involved. I don't even know if this kid's parents were Buddhists. I want to know that. Did they groom the kid? What did they teach him? What did they say? What did the monks say? What did they do? What clues are you giving to a kid that they don't even know? The kid wasn't biologically related to the Buddhist leader, but he seemed to have this knowledge of what the Buddhist leader knew, and that's why he ended up. I guess he's still in Tibet today. 20 years later. Then, of course, there's the famous story. I don't know if it's famous. Many of you have heard this story about this young boy who claimed to be. He was like, let me see, what's his name here? TV. But the story of James Laringer, a 4-year-old Louisiana boy who believed that he was once a World War II pilot who had been shot down over Iwo Jima. He started saying stuff when he was extremely young, like, little man can't get out, plane's on fire, little man can't get away from the plane. And they asked him his name, and he said, James. And in a couple of cases, he properly identified aircraft on the TV that the documentarians got wrong. They were calling these planes Zeros, and they turned out they were something called a Tony. I don't know enough about World War II aircraft. And he claimed to have served on the Natoma, there is a ship called the Natoma that was in the arsenal back then. And so we have some of these facts. He said his name was James. He served on the Natoma. He could identify aircraft carriers. They started looking into this, and the parents claimed they had never seen World War II documentaries. They didn't watch them. They didn't watch war movies or anything like that. However, when this young man, James Laringer, was about 18 months old, his parents did take him to a World War II airplane museum where there were tons of airplanes and tons of information there. And he was fascinated by it. He just ate it up. Some of you are saying, well, that's because he used to be a pilot in his previous life. Others of you are starting to see where the connection is made. There could have been, I don't know if there was a guide there or one of those things you plug into your ears and listen to the stories of the different aircraft, but he could have easily absorbed a ton of information about these various aircraft and these various pilots from this museum, and that would have given him a start. Now, I remember when I was a kid, and the only thing that was important to me, if you tend to focus on one thing, to me it was dinosaurs. Okay, I could identify from what period they were from, and what kind of dinosaur they were, what their offspring, what their offshoots were going to be, Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous, all of that. This is before kindergarten. I just ate it up, and I could tell you I could look at a dinosaur and tell you exactly what kind it was, and basically, I don't remember being able to read much, but I would look through the books, and my parents, I guess, would read me here and there little bits and stuff. Another thing I was a freak about was Star Trek. By the time I was a little guy, I could tell you, first of all, I could almost quote the entire episodes. I thought the Enterprise was real for some reason, and I knew what kind of ship it was. I knew details about the ship. And all that kind of stuff, and I just would watched it. Okay, so that's an example of similarly just accumulating this knowledge. Now everybody takes Star Trek and dinosaurs for granted, but I'll pioneer that. But anyway, these are a couple of examples. And one more that I couldn't find, I don't even know how to look for it on Google. I might try and maybe I'll do a follow-up. There was a woman, who started talking basically in an Irish brogue and claiming all this information about a particular part of Ireland or England or whatever she was talking about. And she would speak in this accent and insisted that they call her a certain name and all this kind of stuff. And she was an adult woman, and she claimed that she had been reincarnated, from this an older Irish family, or whatever, And this went on for a lot of years. I don't know if she had been injured or anything like that. Long story short, they actually found a book in her room when she was a child that was this exact story with these names and all that. And being in the UK, it probably wasn't that hard for her to pick up a different kind of accent. Well, this video is going pretty long, and all I know is that I don't think I've ever been reincarnated or have genetic memory, or sometimes a traumatic event will bring this stuff out. Well, I didn't get anything cool when I had my traumatic event. I just became a bigger jerk, and that was, maybe that's a blessing in itself. But anyway, hey, next week again, not next week, maybe I think on the next show I might read some viewer notes and viewer comments. I love them. There's some good ones out there, and I appreciate everybody that makes a comment. And don't be afraid to hold back. If you don't like me or you think what I said is crap, tell me. Hey, no thin skin here, and I'm not going to be nasty to you, but I might be playing back with you. I might, don't bring your weak game to the playground, is what I'm saying. It's not going to be nasty. It's not going to be fighting, but I'm just saying, don't worry about me. Say what you need to say, and then we'll deal with it or whatever. Anyway, remember my new sponsor, Brightgate, and I will be talking to you guys on the next roundup. Be careful, my Wranglers, and take care.